We are here. I'm hugely excited because we're here with Lee Kirton, and you are the sub-chief PAC-MAN officer. What an amazing title to have. And we're at Bandai Namco Entertainment, the HQ in the UK and Europe. Am I right in saying that?
This is UK HQ.
UK HQ. And we're going to have some game play around here today, but most importantly, we're going to chat to Lee about his role within the business and also his passion for gaming, because obviously you can't work within the gaming business unless you kind of love what you're doing. So you've been in the gaming industry for some time, we'll talk about that, but how did it all start, the kind of moment of truth when you were a kid? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm 41 years old, so I started working in the video games industry 21 years ago. But obviously prior to that, gaming was a massive part of my life, especially growing up. And I was born in 1977, I grew up in the 80s. I pretty much spent most of my time in the arcades, in video shops, playing PAC-MAN, playing Galaga, playing Space Invaders, playing, vector graphic versions of Star Wars, and all of those kind of iconic games, especially Spy Hunter. I remember playing Spy Hunter a lot and dying practically every 5 minutes, but it was so good. And because of that, I spent so much time socialising with friends in the arcades and also in these video shops. Video shops were always quite prominent to me because I used to hang out in video shops a lot because I really loved film. And I used to go in there and get my posters from various managers that worked in these local video shops, which was amazing. So I used to put them up all over my bedroom. So I used to spend a lot of time gaming in there as well. So kind of, always grew up with that. And then when I went to school, a lot of my friends were kind of into games, but probably not as much as I was. I was probably really a super geek then, which wasn't really cool then to be a geek. Where now
you're labelled,
you're really labelled. Yeah. It's like, and I also did go out, so I did climb trees and have fun and ride around on a BMX and played around the car park with a football.
Sure.
So I did all of that as well. But when my pastime at home was listening to music, watching movies, and playing video games, so I had a kind of overall encompassing love for entertainment generally.
Sure.
Music, film, and games were like my three favourite things, and cars. But I thought I'm never going to afford one of those. Like that would have been a super luxury to ever have a car.
It's Spy Hunter though.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely, or Outrun, or Daytona.
Absolutely.
I always had that. So in terms of a career, I never thought that could be something that I wanted to do. And at school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I think it's hard for people to ever sort of know exactly what they want to do unless they've got their career and their education planned out in terms of I'm going to university, I'm going to be a dentist, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But for me, I knew that I always wanted to work in film or video games. And when I got to around about 19 years old, I was looking for a job in media.
Right.
And my dream would have been to work in film, and ultimately I ended up working at a company called GT Interactive, which was a sort of a Time Warner-esque owned company at the time. It stood for Good Times Interactive, which sounds terrible, doesn't it, when you think about it? But it was an American company.
Okay.
They were sort of, I would kind of say that they were the Bethesda of those days, because the games that they had were games like Hex and Quake, Unreal, all the kind of titles that actually licenses that Bethesda kind of own now. So I got a job there as a receptionist of all things.
Really?
Yeah, I was on £12,000 a year, and I did about 60 hours a week, and I was answering phone calls, and then I kind of saw a way of trying to turn the area that I was working into kind of like a sort of a customer services area.
Right.
So I kind of evolved my position into just answering phones and helping people out, into helping gamers. So people used to call, the email had only just been around probably about a year or two.
Right.
So people were still trying to get the hang of this email thing. Most general public didn't have email.
No, sure.
So people would call a lot and say, I've got a problem with my game, can you help me? So I used to go to these FAQ sites that started quite early and have walkthroughs and things, and
tips and hints.
Yeah. And I used to go on there and literally print them out for people and put them in a postage envelope and write them out and send them to people. And then the feedback I used to get from them was just they were just like, wow, this is amazing, thank you so much, because they couldn't find that information
Right.
for themselves. They didn't.
No internet.
Didn't have internet. They didn't have the money for the modem basic internet or whatever there was at the time. So I kind of turned the area into a bit of a broom cupboard,
Right.
and sort of then started supplying customers with guides and help. And I just got
Fascinating.
immense satisfaction from
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
because they were so thankful and so happy, and at the same time I knew what they were after and what frustration it must be to have a game and not understand what to do. Sometimes I used to talk them through it and explain to them where they were and whatever, and then that would satisfy a lot of people. And then, you know, kind of things moved on, and I really liked what the PR team were doing, because they got to spend time with the games.
Right.
And they got in those days it was mainly in magazines, and there was a lot of video game magazines at the time.
Huge.
Probably
Like,
a few basic websites at the time.
30 magazines.
Yeah,
or, you know,
yeah.
For anything and everything.
Just loads. And you know, they were really into getting information for games, and I liked what the PR team were doing. I liked the fun that they could have working with games, but also the passion that they had for the games themselves, and the connection they have with the studios, so working closely with the studios, the people that make the games, and also being able to talk to people about the games.
Yeah.
Because I like to talk about anything, but I certainly like to talk about things I'm passionate about. And for me to speak to a journalist and talk them through a game and why this game's so great, or why they should take note of this particular thing, or why they should think about the sound design in this game because it's got a particular composer or piece of music that they should pay attention to, or the studio and why that studio is so important. Picking out the kind of key areas for people rather than it just being a video game, because people don't really perceive the amount of work that goes into
the thinking and the story behind it. Then really,
You know, there's a huge team of people that go into making a game. A lot of money, a lot of investment, a lot of grind, a huge amount of work, and I don't think many people understand that. They just see it as a piece of entertainment. If they don't like it, they just throw it in the corner.
It's the iceberg effect. You only see the bit at the top, the end result.
Yeah.
But it's all the planning and people and project management that goes into it.
Absolutely, and it takes years as well, and a lot of hours. So, you know, back then, you know, you did start at the bottom, and so I kind of I really asked for a job. I said, I really want to work in the PR department. And whilst I was dealing with customer services and looking after people that bought our games, I was also dealing with regional press.
Okay.
And now regional press at the time was not the press that the PR guys wanted to deal with. They wanted to deal with the official PlayStation magazine, the official Xbox magazine, all that sort of thing. Although the official Xbox magazine wasn't around then, but you get what I mean.
Big boys,
the big boys. Whereas there'd be like, you know, the Evening Telegraph in Manchester, or the York Gazette, or whatever else, and they used to come through to me, and then I used to just deal with them on various bits. So I kind of built up a bit of a community within the regional press, who I felt needed to be looked after just as much as the big boys, because the regional press had 300,000 readers in York or wherever.
Yeah.
So I said to them, I think they're missing a trick in terms of how we deal with people in the right way, and also how we look after people and how we make them feel part of our community, which is quite funny. 20 years later, community is a really big thing.
Definitely.
And I've been saying for years, and people have been no, it will never take off. So for me, I got a job as a PR assistant, and I got to look after the regional press, you know, as a one thing, and that was my role. And then moved through the ranks and was a PR exec when Infograms then purchased GT Interactive. We then went from a company when I was working on the launch of Driver with Reflections and Driver 2 and Stuntman, Unreal Tournament 2004 and the rest, and you know, such a huge list, you know, with games like Abe's Odyssey, real iconic, massive titles at the time, and working on the campaigns for those in the UK and Europe was like incredible, because I got to work with the studios, I got to meet interesting new people, I got to be really passionate about what I was passionate about, which was games. There was that cinematic connection with film, because some of the licenses I ended up working on for years, like Enter the Matrix and The Path to Neo, and working with the Wachowski brothers. And
so into the film like you wanted in the first place.
Yeah, it was exactly, I ended up getting what I kind of set out to get, but
best of both
through
worlds.
a kind of taking, let's say, the lowest or the the lowest job that I could possibly do for what I needed to do to get in, but then to sort of prove myself.
Got you, yeah.
And then when Infogrames purchased GT Interactive, we then had licenses like V-Rally, Alone in the Dark, and then I was kind of responsible for a lot of those products and those games, and then became a PR manager, and then I was a PR manager for Europe for Atari, and then head of communications, and then working on Bandai Namco titles. Atari was distributing those across Europe, so
sure.
you know, I had the fortune to work on games such as, you know, Dead to Rights and Ribbit King and the early Soul Caliburs and the early Ace Combats, and for me that was amazing because these were games that I kind of grew up playing as well.
Yeah.
Just not long before I joined the games industry, Ridge Racer was the first game I ever put in my PlayStation 1. And I always remember putting Ridge Racer in the disc drive,
right,
and then removing the disc drive and putting a music CD in, and it worked. So you could play the game with music playing because it actually cached the product into it, and you could actually. So this is a real big tip.
Okay.
So it was the only game you could do it with.
Oh, really?
So for what I know, so you put Ridge Racer in.
Sure.
As soon as it's loaded up, you could take the disc out, and it didn't need the disc anymore. But you could put your own music disc in, and it played while you were racing.
I know I'm doing later, so thanks for that.
You think about it, you couldn't play your own music over games at that time. So I kind of had this real love for Namco. You know, Namco to me was a really iconic name.
Absolutely.
It sort of had for me. It kind of represented what that decade and what the 80s was all about. You had names like Taito and Atari and, you know, Namco, and it was always Namco was really important when it came to things like Ridge Racer and Ace Combat and Soul Calibur and, you know, Tekken and PAC-Man and Galaga, and then, you know, obviously Atari was symbolic with, you know, Asteroids and Pong, and it sort of, those were the kind of cool brands. And then to be able to obviously work hard, because, you know, you work in games, it all sounds fun, and don't get me wrong, there is, but when you're working every day of the week and every weekend at shows and events, and, you know, you realise that you've got to be cut out in terms of putting the hard work in. But if you put the hard work in, I think that ultimately, you know, you'll be rewarded in terms of you get a job that continues.
Yeah.
But
so you would encourage people to come into the industry. We were talking about that earlier, weren't we?
Yeah,
because it is a bit of a. I mean, in the 80s, you know, I always thought, you know, Ultimate Play the Game was like, who are they? Mysterious, Stamper Brothers.
So good.
You know, and then you move forward, and some of the brands you mentioned, that Infogrames and such, like Sensible Software, even John Hare, and he wasn't. He was probably sitting in a bedroom somewhere, and we just didn't know. But there is this cloak of mysteriousness. But you know, for people, I'm sure there's a lot of. I know there's people who follow us who want to get into the industry.
Yeah.
You know, why shouldn't they really? I know it's
Absolutely.
hard work, but
I mean, I know John Hare well, and him and I meet up from time to time. He comes in. I've seen Social Soccer a few times, and you know that he does a lot of work in sort of presenting to, you know, I think to students and inspiring people, which is great. Something I do next door with a school we have next door called the Falcon School, and I think it's important to inspire other people to be. Inspire them by the games industry as a whole, because when I was a kid I never thought, you think about a movie being made and you just think about these Hollywood actors and this glamour, and there's no way on earth you could ever work in that. But then you don't understand all the people involved in putting a film together, or the people that then take that movie to market. And it's the same for a video game. You know, it takes years of work, years of planning, and teams of 50 to 300 to 400 people, and people from all sides of all aspects of working from if you take developers and publishers, let's say they're two separate things. In the development world, you know, like film, you've got writers, producers, directors, you've got designers, level designers, artists, you know, the list goes on, financiers, you know, QA departments, you know, everything. So there's so many roles that are there within a studio as such. And the publishing side of things, and the distribution side of things, you have finance people, you have sales people, you have PR people, you have marketing people, you have events people. Now we have community teams, you know, all of these things, which is great. And all of those people need to be passionate about what they do. It's hard to be passionate about all jobs. I completely understand that. And also there are so many people out there that do jobs that are so worthwhile and so important to keeping us alive, keeping things ticking over, keeping the world moving forward. And we have to remember that we are not making atomic weapons here, we're making video games. We're providing entertainment to other people to make them smile.
Yes.
You know, Bandai Namco, you know, has this company motto which is dreams, fun and inspiration, which is all about, you know, ultimately we're a family company.
Sure.
We only want to provide games that provide fun.
I mean, how could you hate Pac-Man?
No, I mean it's impossible, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's been
It's been a great conversation.
Cheers.
There's things I found out which I didn't know. I think more and more people wanted to know about kind of what's behind the industry and the people behind it. So it's, you know, it's really good to kind of spend some time with you, really.
I mean, yeah, me too. And I think one of the important things is that you do have to, if you know, there are many roles within the video games industry, and yes, it can be, back in the day people believed, you know, well, I just send my CV in and things like that, and you know, not all companies have HR departments or have, you know, like proper HR departments, or their HR department might be in another country. And you know, I think nowadays it's with the community, the way the community is, engaging with people at events, you know, whether it's at Insomnia or EGX or MCM Expo, you know, you'll find that when you go to those events, you can talk to people at publishers and developers and have conversations. And you'll find that engaging with people and having conversations can maybe put you in a good position. But there are so many roles, you know, within the games business that, you know, we're always looking for new talent in all areas. Whether you're a finance genius or a creative genius or a great artist or whatever, there are many roles, and I think it all comes down to a lot of passion and a lot of enthusiasm, and you know, and
if you really want to do it.
If you really want to do it, yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
And you do, so
yeah.
fantastic.
Cheers, mate.
Great to meet you.
Thank you.